Well, I'll go ahead and kick us off. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alyssa Best. For those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I serve as an alumni career advisor in the AU Career Center. And really excited to have Hallie and Julia joining us today. We've a perfectly timed topic of graduated, now what? A real world plan for your career. And we will be recording this session. So if if you have to step away or you're I don't if you're like me and trying to capture all the information and the notes and everything like that, and you will have an opportunity to see everything. Again, we'll post it on our YouTube channel after the fact. And back by popular demand, we have Hallie Crawford. And so if you've had the pleasure of seeing Hallie present before, then you're in for a treat. And she has brought in a colleague, Julia, to co-facilitate today's session. And we also have recordings of previous webinars that Hallie has conducted for us on our YouTube channel as well. And before I do a quick introduction, just to point out what my colleague Emily had posted into the chat. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A or the chat, and I'll help to monitor and moderate those, and we'll get to them as we go. And this is intended to be interactive, and I think we'll have the benefit of it being an intimate group, so we can hopefully everyone will feel like you get attention and have your questions answered as well. And with that, as I mentioned, we've had Hallie present before, and excited to have her return as well. She is a certified career coach, speaker, and author based in Atlanta, Georgia, whose coaching company helps people find and succeed in their dream job. Since 2002, Hallie's team of coaches have helped thousands of people. She's been featured in the media, including U.S. News, U.S. News, coined a new outlet, Forbes, CNN, Money Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. Hallie has an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and a master's degree from the University of Illinois. She experienced going through her own tough career transition and is still learning to appreciate that while she's over 50. She still gets asked on airplanes if she's old enough to sit in the emergency exit row. And please give an energetic welcome to our speaker, Hallie Crawford. Take it away.
Thanks, Alyssa. I really appreciate that. And I loved the back by popular demand. I think I need to incorporate that every time into my introduction. So thank you for that great intro. And we're very excited to be here with you today. We really appreciate your time. I know summertime, et cetera. And we're going to be talking about what do you do? We know graduation has been a few weeks, but what do we do next? How do we get started in the job search, et cetera? And I just wanted to let you know really quickly, and then I'll talk about these next couple of slides here, is that we know that there's a lot going on in the world and in the market, in the job market, and it may feel unsettling for people. And we just want you to know that number one, you're not alone. That's why we're here today to help support you in finding something that fits you, the direction, the job search, all of that good stuff. And that we are finding with our clients actually that the jobs are out there, they're just a little bit harder to find. So we need you to see your search as something where you are talking with as many people as you possibly can. This is where you can leverage your American University alumni network. The more people you talk to, events you attend, it's not just about applying online, but it's those networking connections as well. This is how you can find something sooner. So please just have a positive attitude as much as possible. Things do seem a little bit scary, but they're actually not as bad as they may seem. So we had a great intro already. I'm not going to belabor it. I've been coaching and training since 2002. The advice we're going to give you today is advice that we give to all of our clients because I have a wonderful team of certified certified career coaches and resume writers. And our expert today, if we take a look at this next slide, who works with recent grads and knows all of the ins and outs of what you need to do with your job search, she's actually going to be presenting for us today, Julia Forsyth. She attended Colby College in Maine and has many years working with recent grads, has worked with us for a long time, and she's fantastic. So I'm going to turn the reins over to her in the next few slides as we go here. So let's take a look at our next slide. One of the things that we always like to say, like in advance here, and I know Alyssa, touched on this, but just as a quick reminder, we would love it if you could be present today and not feel like you have to write everything down frantically. I'm a huge note taker, and I always want people to know that. Reminder, you'll get the recording so you can listen to that later. And we are also happy to give you our slides. If you get out your phone, there's a QR code that we'll share in a couple more slides. So you can download those. So if you would say to yourself, okay, based on my situation and where I'm at with my search, etc., if you would choose one action step that makes the most sense for you and your situation, that's what we would love from today, is for you to walk away with something very practical and tangible. And actually, when we get to our Q&A closer to the end, we want to hear about those action steps. So if we look at our next slide, and just quick reminder, we're going to have Q&A throughout, but we also want to see those action steps too. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So take a look at this next slide, if you would. And I kind of already alluded to this. We realize that job searching can feel overwhelming. And when you're thinking about, okay, what kind of job can I even get right out of college? That can feel overwhelming too. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And if you look at this slide, we're fully aware that there's new technology out there. It can feel overwhelming to job search because there's so many different steps to take. There's a lot of different choices of jobs. Like, it's a good thing, but it can feel overwhelming too. And sometimes we feel like there's pressure. Like, what am I qualified for? And what am I going to actually enjoy? And how do I find the perfect career for me? So we realize that this can feel overwhelming. And what we're going to try to do today is break down the most common issues we find come up with our clients, our recent grads, and help you address those specific things that we find a lot of people struggle with. So let's look at our next slide. And I talked about this a little bit already. So I just want you to know that it's a good idea, if you will, to like turn off the news and not pay attention to it, and say to yourself, okay, I'm going to take the tools that I learned today from this webinar. I'm going to network with people. I'm going to, apply online, but do it in the right way, and take these tools and kind of stay in your zone of how many people can I talk to every day and every week? How many connections can I make? Events can I attend? And update your resume and all of these other things that we're talking about, but just try to stay in a positive place for yourself to make this happen, because we've had clients get jobs in the past several months, like a lot of them. So just know that it's possible. You just got to take the right action steps. So let's look at our next slide. And then I'm going to turn this over to Julia after this slide and let her kind of dive in as the expert. But here's our agenda for today so that you know where we're going. We're going to talk first about most common post-grad fears and myths that we hear from our clients. We're going to help you think about defining your direction and what can I do with my major? What's possible? What's realistic? What's going to be a good fit for me? And then we will talk about preparing your materials, obviously resume, LinkedIn, and networking, and then implementing your plan, how to take some good action steps to move forward. As a quick reminder, you can get the slides here using this QR code. I'm going to put a link in the chat box to it. Do me a favor and locate the Q&A box and chat box, please, because we are happy to answer questions. We would love to see comments, resources, anything else you want to share, as well as those action steps as we go. And you can post those at any time as we progress. We will have time for Q&A at the end too. So Julia, if you want to take it away. we are good to go.
Thank you, Hallie. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. As Hallie mentioned, I'm Julia. I'm a certified career coach. Wouldn't say I'm a recent graduate, but recent-ish in the past 10 years or so. But it is great to meet everyone. So I wanted to dive in with our first agenda topic, which is some common myths and fears. So as Hallie already alluded to, the job search can be overwhelming. And there can be a lot of noise, especially when we are graduating from college and starting out on our first job. There's also, again, a lot of noise on LinkedIn, Instagram from our peers and our parents. And so it can be overwhelming and sort of hard to know what to believe, right? So as I'm reading through some of these common myths or fears, virtual raise of hands, if one or more of you have, resonated with some of these. So the first is I have to pick the perfect career or I'll fall behind. All jobs are being replaced by AI. I should have picked a different major to help land a better job. Everyone else has it figured out. And entry-level jobs no longer exist. They really require 5 years of experience. So I see some hand raises in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
They've come to the right place. So let's talk about some of the truths behind these, because while some of them hold value, it's not as black and white as it may seem. And there's a lot of different nuances. So the first, entry-level jobs require 5 years of experience. As we know here at Create Your Career Path, from talking to recruiters and hiring managers, these are largely wish lists on the job description, right? Of course, companies are going to look for the perfect candidate, but they know that they're not always going to get it. So if you meet at least 70% of what's listed, you should apply. The other 30% is often learned on the job. Second, I should have picked a different major. Some of you might be thinking, should I have picked a different major to help me land a better job? Here's the thing, employers are focused on the skill set and not necessarily what your actual degree is in. What gets you hired is how well you can articulate your transferable skill set, which is something that we will go into more detail in today. Third, AI is replacing all the jobs. I know this is a scary one. And AI is largely replacing a lot of tasks, not necessarily people. So the person who knows and is familiar with AI and can speak to how they will incorporate it into their role will have, the upper hand. Fourth, everyone else has it figured out. I promise you, this is not true. I know we see the highlights, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, but we're not seeing is, the months before that in the rejection. So I know it is so hard not to compare, but to the best of our ability, just know that is the highlight reel. And lastly, I have to pick the perfect career right now. This first job is our jumping off point, right? It's helping us understand what skills do we like? What are we good at? What type of environment do we want to be in? So it is by no means our forever job, and it's more a jumping off point in information gathering.
Yeah. Julia, do you think that there are ways that that you help clients, kind of tune out the noise? Like I said, turn off the news, and I know we talk with our clients obviously about negative thinking and talking back to it and that stuff. Do you feel like that helps with the recent grads?
I do, yes. And sometimes, I'll even say, for now, your only goal is to focus on what are you interested, right? Let's try not to jump ahead to, am I qualified for this job? We first need to think about what are we interested in before we can even jump ahead to, are you qualified? Can you get it? So sometimes it can be helpful just having a person telling you right now, don't worry about a B, C, and D. Just focus on this first step right here.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt, but I
No,
just
no,
had
no,
to ask.
no. That's great. All right, so let's launch our first poll. We always like to know what you folks are feeling and thinking from the audience. So how confident are you right now about what you want to do after graduation. So we have very confident, somewhat confident, and not confident yet, feeling unsure. So I see they're coming in. Let's see.
And it's okay if you're not confident because that's why you're
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's all good.
So I'm sort of seeing a mix here, which is also great. Good to have folks at all different places. Do we have more people voting, or is this, oh, we got a couple more.
Yeah, give it one more second. I think too that this influences what your action step will be, everybody too. Like if you're not sure what to apply to, obviously that's the first thing that you want to work on versus, okay, I'm going to work on my resume, but we don't know how to tailor it. So the poll is helpful for us to kind of gauge where everybody is at, but also for you to identify what do I need to work on first, I think.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and so we've got a good mix. We've got a good
Mhm.
mix here. Can everyone
Yeah.
can you see the you can see what's coming in, right?
Yep, they
Okay.
should be able to. Yeah. And it looks like we've got the 50% that's very confident, which is that's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Yep.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. I'm gonna exit out of this. Okay. So this actually kind of leads in nicely, even for those who kind of know what they want to do, right? Diving into our second agenda item, we're going to talk about defining our direction. So before, we can work on our resume, LinkedIn, and networking, we need to define and understand, what our direction is and what are the types of jobs we are going to be applying for. Because the more direction and focus we have, the more confident you will be when trying to understand how to translate and transfer your skills into a specific career path. So we have this model, which has 8 blocks that all build upon each other. But we always start with the values and fulfillment piece first, because ultimately, even if you're making the most money in the world and your job isn't aligned to kind of your strengths, your passions, your interests, there's going to be somewhat of a gap. So, the first thing that we do is start to define those interests and values. Then we want to look at our skills, right? Because we want to be performing tasks in our job that actually interest us as much as possible. It's never going to be 100% of the tasks interest us. And then from there, we want to kind of layer in personality and environment, right? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Should you be, what type of environment should you be in? And then the last thing that we consider, but also incredibly important, is compensation, right? Is this next job that I have going to fit my lifestyle, going to afford, how I live and what I'm looking to make. So we kind of have all of these pieces that build upon each other, and use that as our direction for next steps. Okay. So this brings us to, you might be wondering, I've only had a summer job or internship. How am I supposed to figure out my skills, interests, and values from my major? The answer is, start with what you already have. Think about your classes, projects, extracurriculars, and the moments that you felt most engaged, right? Those experiences do reveal patterns and will help you identify your direction. So you don't need to do this right now, but after this session at some point, you'll want to start to make a list and write out, 1, what were my most rewarding classes? 2, what extracurriculars did I enjoy the most? And 3, what papers or subjects captivated my attention the most, right? This will help to inform the types of jobs, industries, or companies that you may go into. As an example, let's say you were a psychology major. Your best classes were social psychology and organizational behavior. You were really great at, breaking down complex ideas and asking thought-provoking questions. Those are your skills. You loved the classes because you were fascinated by why people behave the way that they do. That was your interest, right? And your values, you realized you loved a collaborative environment, right? Where you could give and take and share ideas with others. So then you have your strengths, interests, and values. And then from there, maybe you say, okay, that could lead into a career path that is HR or people ops. And so that's, high level, but that's a little bit about how that process will go. And Hallie, I can see, are there comments coming in through the chat? I can't actually see them on my end.
Yeah, so there's a question that came through. If we can just look at it real quick, is one piece of advice I see a lot is not to spray and pray, which I have not heard that specific way of putting it, and I love it. Thanks for sharing. Spray and pray with my applications. I know what I'm looking for, what I can do well, etc. And because of that, I've been more judicious in what I've applied to. But it's been 6 months and 50 applications because I'm being picky and I'm starting to lose hope. Do you have any advice for either one, holding on to your standards, or two, knowing when it's time to drop your requirements, so to speak? And we can both help answer this one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question. I have heard the spray and pray, which I do think is, great every time. Look, I think it's a balance. I would first say, before you start to kind of change your strategy and start, blindly applying to, a million jobs, what we will get to, and let's make sure that we are having the right application strategy. So it is still good to be picky, but we'll get to this in, further slides. But when we are applying, are we making sure that we're tailoring our resume? Are we trying to network and get in front of an actual human and not just rely on, our resume passing through the ATS scanner, right? It's following these steps that we will get into more detail to increase our chances, because by and large, the folks that are kind of being picky, networking, taking the time to adjust their resume, that strategy does still work better than, using Easy Apply, LinkedIn to, blindly send out applications. Hallie, I don't know if you have anything to add into that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I would be doing more networking and talking with people in addition to the applying. Just side note, but important. Don't apply through LinkedIn or the job board, everybody. And I think Julia is going to say this, so I'm stealing her advice.
No. Go ahead.
But apply on the organization website, but then try to find alumni connections that maybe work there, that type of thing. If it's going to make you feel a little bit better, you could say, and you could use AI to just brainstorm ideas for 5 minutes and say, what are some adjacent roles that I could start looking at? So we don't want you to give up, but you could say, okay, let me have a plan B and start implementing that too, but still do everything that Julia said first. And then maybe spend 5 minutes and say, okay, I could also look at these other kind of adjacent roles to help me cast my net just a little bit wider. Hopefully that helps, like, as a starting point.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Thanks for the question. Good.
And then in addition to kind of that exercise that I just laid out, we do also encourage folks to take additional assessments like the Clifton Strengths, skill scan, just a great way to uncover soft skills you might not have thought of before, right? Especially when you haven't had a gazillion jobs before. So just as you're sort of mapping your skills and interests, these additional assessments can be helpful. So we have a strength finder if you, want to scan that code as well. That are, just great additions and add-ons. All right. So at this point, you might be thinking, all right, so I have, skills, interests, and strengths, but how does that help me land a job if I've never had a full-time role before, right? And this is where the transferable skill set comes in. So transferable skills are skills that you've already developed that can apply across many different jobs and industries. So if you have an underlying skill set, for example, you're analytical, you're a relationship builder, those are skills that can be used across any setting, right? So to get into, more detail and how do I figure out what transferable skills I have, we have another little exercise that could be helpful. So again, you don't need to do this right now, but think about an experience you've had. It could be a part-time job, a summer gig, a volunteer role, right? Don't overthink it, but you'll want to break out the skill set associated with that job and role. So for example, Someone may pick the time that they worked at a coffee shop over the summer. Initially, they might just say, I worked at a coffee shop. What's the skill set? When you break it down, what you really did at the coffee shop was serve over 100 customers a day, handle complaints, keep a line moving under pressure, which leads us into the transferable skill set of customer service, conflict resolution, communication, and multitasking, which are real skill sets that are super valuable and that employers are looking for. AI tools can be really helpful as well. To help, again, you figure out, well, still, I'm having trouble figuring out what that skill set is, right? So even if you type into Claude, ChatGPT, whatever it is, I was a lifeguard this summer. What skill set did that build, and what is my transferable skill set? This is going to be a really, really valuable exercise, and to also help you feel more confident going into the search, knowing what that transferable skill set is. Okay. Moving right along on to our third agenda item, we are going to be covering our job search essentials and how to organize them so that we can land a job. So we have resume, elevator pitch, LinkedIn, and networking. So we're going to start with the topic you're probably wondering about the most, the resume. So again, this kind of leads into what Hallie and I were saying before, with each job you apply to, you're going to want to follow some of these steps that we're about to review. So when it comes to a resume, there are a few things to keep in mind. The first is format. Recruiters and ATS scanners both respond well to kind of a clean, consistent structure. So you're always going to want, as a rule of thumb, your name at the top, followed by a summary, followed by a skills section. So skills section is, soft skills and technical skills. Then you're going to have your experience with your education at the bottom. When writing your resume, it is totally fine to leverage AI, but within reason, right? We can use it to help us, firm up a sentence or generate ideas, but we never ever want to copy and paste directly. Hiring managers will know, it will be obvious, and you might be booted, from the application process. The third is making sure we are leveraging our transferable skills and having those keywords be front and center. So after you've determined what your transferable skills are, you're going to want to make sure that those are showing up in the summary section, in your skills section, and woven into your experience bullet points, right? You can use tools like JobScan and or AI to make sure that you have the right keywords in place. And then lastly, having a master resume, but tailoring it to different roles. To make, your life easier, you're going to want to have a master resume. And then every time that you apply to a job, you'll make a slightly different version where you're making sure that you're adding in any main keywords or themes that you're seeing from the job description. So I know this was a high level, but we, as we launch our second poll, if a recruiter skimmed your resume, would they know the types of jobs that you're targeting? I know I gave a very high level of the resume, but we do this all day, every day. And so if you're looking for more information, please, please, please feel free to book a consult or a session with us. And, we can get more into the nitty gritty of the resume.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to just dive in as we're doing the poll is one of our coaches is working with a client the other day, and she's in HR, and she's like, oh yeah, my whole team, we're always like, oh, this was written by AI. And I still have not figured out, and Julie, I don't know if you know this either, but I do not know yet, everybody, like how human beings can tell things were written by the AI, but they can. So it's not just the scanner that companies use to filter you out. But if it gets to a human, like people who do this all day, every day are like, AI, done. And I keep wanting to ask them, like, I don't know if it sounds like a computer. I don't know what the deal is, but they have figured it out. So you just really need to be careful with it.
Yeah, curious what you all think as well, but I think AI has a really specific way of writing things in sort of a robotic tone. And another really small nitpicky thing, but AI loves to use dashes. So anytime I see dashes where a human being wouldn't normally put them, that's kind of an indication to me that maybe AI was used. But okay, so we have another, no one has no, probably not, which is great. But so yes, we have another split between yes, very clearly, and somewhat could it could be stronger.
Yeah, this
That's
is good.
that's
That's
great.
good.
And also for those who have somewhat but could be stronger, that's totally normal. It takes a while to get into the practice of how to tweak your resume, making sure I'm getting in the right keywords, right? It is kind of like a muscle that you have to build, and then it gets easier as you keep moving forward. Okay, great. Okay, up next, elevator pitch. So, an elevator pitch is basically a statement about who you are, what you're looking for, and the results you bring to the table or an organization. You need to have an elevator pitch for any type of, informational interviewing, networking conversation, even casual conversation, with a family friend, whatever it might be, so that people know, well, what is it that you're looking to do, right? Um, I won't read through all of these, but here are a few example elevator pitches that you can use when starting to put yours together, right? It's here's what I've done and here's what I'm looking to do. You need to be clear so that people know how they can help you, right? So again, you'll have access to the slides so you can view these examples. Okay. Another big one is your LinkedIn profile. So if you haven't updated your LinkedIn profile, now is a sign to kind of, get started there, right? Recruiters are actively searching LinkedIn. So this is going to be one of your first impressions, right? So starting with the basics, I'm sure you all know this, but you're always going to want to have a professional photo, a branded banner, um, again, I'm sure you all know that. And then you're going to want to have an about section where you can get a little bit more personal than your resume. So, as I mentioned on the resume, you'll have a summary section. So, your about section on LinkedIn can kind of be an extension of that, right? You're going to want to make sure to write it in first person. And you'll use this section, similar to your elevator pitch, to tell your story in a way that connects your background to the direction that you want to go in. Recommendations. If you can get one or two recommendations, even from a professor or supervisor or colleague, that can add a lot of, credibility. And then you're going to want to make sure that you're using keywords throughout your profile. Similar to the resume, LinkedIn works like a search engine. So we're going to want to make sure we're highlighting the right keywords and transferable skills, so that your profile is getting service to recruiters. And then lastly, you're going to want to make sure that you have your open to on LinkedIn. You are able to do your open to just for recruiters to see, without having that branded banner. So if folks have specific questions about how to do that, please don't hesitate to message me and I can walk you through those steps.
You know what? I'm dying to know too, Julia. Sorry to interrupt, but I am curious.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love what I do, so I just have to dive in. I'm curious how many people on the call today, if you'll just put like a raise
Yeah.
hand if you're on LinkedIn and like have a profile, because I'm hoping that more recent grads are, yeah, good. People are on it, good, are kind of getting the message. Like, we understand if you're not, but you might be thinking, like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm too young. I don't have connection. No, you need to be on LinkedIn because they're going to end up looking for you or trying to find you on there or whatever. So, I mean, I'm even telling my 18-year-old who's going to college, he needs to start on LinkedIn. So it looks like we've got maybe like three people. Oh, it looks like four who have, which is fantastic. But just please don't forget this step because it is a big deal. And the example of what we're talking about with your branded banner and stuff is up here on the right side of the slide at the top.
No, that's a great point. And if you feel hesitant or nervous about how to create your LinkedIn, look at some of your peers for inspiration, right? To make sure you're on the right track. It's a great way to go about it as well, because it can be daunting to kind of create your profile from scratch.
Totally. Yeah, true.
Awesome. Last but not least, networking. Which is a word that I know makes a lot of people uncomfortable. So I like to reframe it and think of it as information gathering instead. Networking is not just reaching out to strangers and asking for favors, but more so reaching out to someone genuinely to understand how they built their career, to hear more about their experience, and then hopefully get some advice, right? Networking, I cannot stress enough, it is the highest return in the job search, because you never know what will lead you or who that person might end up, putting you in touch with. So it is crucial that we do networking, and we can start with some baby steps, which I will get into. So again, who should you network with, right? It can be scary to do a cold outreach. So start with who you already know. Go through your phone, go through your LinkedIn connections, think about your past coworkers, classmates, alumni, friends and family, right? Someone in your circle likely knows someone who is hiring, or at least can give you insight, advice, or tips. As you can see from the stat here, 60 to 70, I think it actually might be a bit higher now, of jobs are found through networking. This slide will actually also help us get into some more practical strategies that you can take with you after this session, of just, again, where to start, because I know it can be super daunting. So I would first go onto LinkedIn and make sure you are part of your alumni network, right? I think Hallie already mentioned this. This is a great first place to start, because you already have a common ground and a shared experience with these folks, right? Even if you don't know them personally. So take a look and start to identify, 5 to 10 people in your alumni network who you'd like to speak with, right? Then start to draft your outreach message. Make sure you're specific in your ask, right? Don't just say, hi, I want to connect. Something like, hi, I'm a recent grad exploring careers in psychology. Your path really stood out to me. Do you have 20 minutes to chat, right? You don't need to ask them for a job, but just say you want to pick their brain, hear more about their experience, right? After you've had the conversation, you want to make sure to add in a little hook, right? Always say, do you have anyone else that you suggest I talk to? Do you know anyone else that could be helpful to me? Or what am I missing? What haven't I thought of, right? This is how your network grows, because, one conversation turns into 2, turns into 4, and then you're starting to get a bunch of warm leads, right? And then lastly, as I'm sure you all know, follow up, to say thank you, but also to, kind of try to keep a rapport with them, right? Maybe you say, if I have a question or if something comes up or I see a job at your company, is it okay if I reach out in the future? So these are hopefully going to be some easy, actionable next steps that you can take. Okay. So now, in an ideal world, your direction, you have your materials updated, you're starting to network. It's time to apply and talk about application strategy. So we're going to go over a quick checklist in the next slide of things to remember every time before you go and submit your application. So again, I know some of this is a little repetitive, but just to, drive it home, before you apply, you're always going to want to check a few things on your resume first. You're going to want to make sure it's tailored to that specific job description, right? That you're pulling in the keywords from the posting and making sure that they're reflected in your resume. Next, you're going to want to make sure that you've quantified some achievements, right? Even some small ones will make your bullet points more compelling. Then, simple, but a lot of people forget this step, proofread, proofread, proofread. Make sure the spelling is right. You are applying to the right role. It's your right resume version. Again, sounds basic, but you would be surprised how many people have a slight typo. After your resume is in place, but before you apply, again, you're going to want to search that company on LinkedIn. You're going to want to see if there is an alumni or an employee that you can reach out to. Again, as I mentioned before, you really want to try to get in front of someone and not just rely on your resume being, approved through the ATS scanner. You're also going to want to skip the easy apply. And, even if you find the job on LinkedIn, go to the website and apply from there for two reasons. One, it ensures that your information is being transferred over properly. And two, it ensures that the job posting is still actually active and live. LinkedIn can sometimes have old job postings, right? The company is no longer hiring. They just forgot to take the posting down. So that is going to be key as well. And last but not least, it really is quality over quantity. So I would rather you have a goal that says, I'm going to apply to 2 jobs per week, but I'm going to be super intentional. I'm going to tweak my resume. I'm going to find someone to get in touch with. I'm going to find a hiring manager or recruiter, right? Rather than saying, I'm going to apply to 20 jobs per week, but it's just going to be easy apply, right? This is super important. And just, start with a reasonable action plan and game plan.
Yeah. Well, and I think this goes back to the question that was asked earlier too about, it's doing things as comprehensively as you can and
Right.
a numbers game a little bit too. And just as a heads up for everybody, Emily put connection, alumni connection groups in the chat
Oh,
box
great.
to make sure that you all can do that because they're warm leads. And we know, and Julia's stats she might say a little bit differently, but if you think about like if you're in sales, let's just say, and you're selling yourself in your job search, like sales return rates are like 10 or 20%, right? So this is why it's so important. And we know, and we're not saying everyone's going to get back to you and it's going to be like perfect. Like we get that a lot of people are not, but you're upping your chances when you leverage alumni, when you leverage connections, when you write the right message, you increase those percentages. And this is where it is a little bit of a numbers game. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you. And that was actually our last slide. So we can go ahead and move into our Q&A. So everyone, please feel free to write your questions into the chat. And I know at the beginning, Hallie, talked about writing down one action step too. So if you feel comfortable adding that into the chat as well, so others can see, would be great.
Yeah, go ahead and add those in. I know it takes a minute sometimes, but if you'll write it down for yourself and stick it in the chat box too, that'd be great. And on this slide, you'll see there's a couple of suggested action steps. Like we talked about before, it's going to depend on your situation and where you're at with your thinking and your search. But let us know if you have any questions about anything we covered today or anything related. And then, Alyssa, if you have things that you want to announce as well before we go, obviously, we've got plenty of time, but I'm just like putting it out there. So, what questions do you guys have? It looks like we've got two in the chat box. Julia, can you see those
Yes,
okay?
I can see now.
Okay, perfect.
So, okay. How do you make yourself stand out in an informational interview? They often feel like information gathering for you, but is there a good way to make yourself stand out or have them get to know you a bit? That's a great question. I think it depends on, who we're talking to. So an informational interview could be with someone that, you're talking to. There's not necessarily a job there, but you want to kind of get in front of that person and be top of mind. And then there's an informational interview, maybe there is a job, and before you talk to the hiring manager or recruiter, you're talking to someone at the company. Those are kind of, two basic scenarios. The first thing that I would say is the fact that you are reaching out and getting in front of someone shows initiative, right? A lot of people do not take advantage of that opportunity. So that is the first thing. The second thing that I would say is, make sure you kind of come to the meeting or the interview, kind of saying, here's the skill set I can bring, right? Here's what I have that can be helpful. It seems like you're hiring for this role because there's a gap in A, B, and C. here's the skill set and experience that I have that can really bring value. Hallie, what else do you have to
Mhm.
add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. It's even though you're not asking that person to get you a job, you're still treating the informational interview as like an interview in that you're selling yourself. You're using and practicing your elevator pitch in your speech, and you're still weaving those things in, even if they're not asking you those questions, you're still, talking about the value that you bring and why you're cool, so to speak. So, yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a great question.
Yep.
Okay, how much validity is there to the idea apply for the job you may not be qualified for to see if the company has another opening they haven't published yet? Another great question. Again, I would say if you have maybe 60% of the skill set, right? And it depends what's lacking. If it's, you need your master's, maybe that's not a great idea to, apply. But if you have 60% of the skill set, I would apply and I would try to find or identify the hiring manager or recruiter beforehand and kind of say, look, I applied for this role. I'm super interested in working at this company. I know there's a little bit of a gap between what's on my resume and this role. I'm a quick learner, would love to be considered for this job and or if something else comes up that you think I might be qualified for, right? I think 50 or 60% qualified, apply, and then kind of send that initial message to the recruiter or hiring manager beforehand with that little caveat.
This happens more than you think that if they really like you, I mean, we've had clients where they'll create a job for them.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm not saying this happens all day long, but it can happen. And it's the people who, like Julie has been saying, who take the initiative, who put themselves out there and do something about it and follow up. And those are the people that get the job. So, yeah, you never know.
Right. And I would say if it's a company that you really want to work for, right? I don't know that you should spend your time doing this for any job you see, right? Within reason, because we want to be conscious of, time management. And then the worst that happens is maybe you don't hear back from them, right? But I think if it's a company that's like your North Star, you definitely should.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads us into how do you stay motivated and encouraged to apply? Rejections are difficult, and it also feels hard to commit time to lengthy applications. It's a great question. Part of the job search process is mental, right? How can we stay motivated? How can we stay, like not excited, but like, how can we keep momentum, right? And this is sometimes why I think setting those smaller goals can be helpful. And I think also putting more of an emphasis on networking. And maybe you say, I'm going to apply to 2 applications a week, but I know networking is really powerful. So maybe I'm going to say, I'm going to make more of an effort to apply to 3 folks a week and have those conversations. I think making sure that you're splitting up your tasks and not just spending, 20 hours a week on applications. I think supplementing and adding in those networking calls as well is going to be super helpful. But it's hard, right? It's a hard process, and be kind to yourself throughout it as well.
Yeah, that self-care is just so important too. We've got another question a little bit further down, Julia, too, from
Where
scroll down maybe.
that one? Yes. Okay. How do you tactfully mention that you're applying for a thing at a company with someone you're reaching out to, whether they're the hiring manager or someone else at the company? So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's if you're applying, how do you let someone know so that they will ideally flag your resume in the back end? Am I right?
Sounds like it to
Okay.
me. Yeah.
So, what I would say is, I would submit your application. I would reach out to that individual and say, hi, Jake. I just applied for X so and so role. Super excited about working here. If there's anyone else you think I should be put in touch with or anyone else that I can speak to at the company, I would greatly appreciate it. Hopefully that tips them off. And for most people, it does to say, Great. So glad to hear you applied. Let me flag your resume in the back end, or let me, pass your information along to a recruiter or a hiring manager. We don't want to really directly ask them to do a favor for us, but that's sort of, hopefully they read between the lines, which 9 times out of 10 they do.
Yeah,
So
it's kind
hopefully I
of
answered that
implied.
question correctly.
That's why people are doing things like networking. Everybody gets that that's kind of how it works. So there's another one from Katie right below.
Yes. So is it appropriate to reach out to a recruiter, especially, if there's not a time in mind? Yes, yes, yes. Again, and now I know I'm repeating myself, but take the initiative. A lot of times on LinkedIn, when you apply to a role, it will say contact the hiring manager. So many people don't do it, right? So it seems like, oh my gosh, they're going to get a million messages. So many people don't even take advantage of that. Again, it takes initiative, it shows interest. I have a lot of friends that are in HR, and, depending on the day, they say they love it when someone follows up and gets in front of them and in touch with them, right? They would rather have that than have to go through 1,000 applications to find you, right? If you can make it easier for them to find your application and identify, an individual that they want to hire, it's so much easier for them than going through, again, a million applications. So I cannot harp on this enough. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and just do it in the right way. Like be
Yeah,
professional, don't
yeah,
talk their ear off, like
yeah.
don't be a stalker. There's a quick anecdote from one of our clients a few weeks ago. They were literally on a call with one of our coaches, and they were like, "Yeah, there was this job I was interested in, and um, I thought they were going to bring me in for an interview, and she hadn't heard back from the recruiter like in a couple weeks. And our coach, which is what Julie is saying, was like, okay, well, why don't you follow up again? Like it's been a couple weeks. It's not like it was just yesterday, and there's no harm in it. And literally, the client did it on the call right then, sent the recruiter a message. And that recruiter got back to them during the coaching call, like 2 seconds later. I'm not kidding. And so it just reminds us like, don't feel like you're bugging people. Like, do it in the right way. You're being professional. You're not stalking them. Like the woman just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I got behind and, I overlooked this. Let's bring you in for an interview." And so that one little nudge made a big difference. So just keep that in mind. It's a good example and story about that.
And also don't be defeated if they don't respond, right? Like this works a lot of the time, but it doesn't work all the time. And so it is, just because you do it once and you don't hear back, don't let that discourage you from trying with someone else, right? It is a numbers game. You might reach out to 20 people, 10 get back to you, and then you end up scheduling a call with 7 of those, right? Because people get busy, they drop off, they forget to respond, they go on vacation. So I just, I don't want it to discourage you if you don't hear back from someone.
Because you won't. I mean, that's just part of reality. That's the
Yeah,
deal. You
yeah,
just keep moving, go to the next
yep.
person, keep going. Okay, cool.
Those were great
So
questions.
they're very good. And we've got Emily posted some more information, what's coming up in the chat box. So take a look at that. We're here to support you. American University is here to support you. That's the whole purpose of this. Um, Oh, we didn't get any action steps yet. So if anybody can post a couple action steps, that'd be great. And then, Alyssa, is there anything else that you wanted to announce or say too while we're waiting for any action steps before we go?
Absolutely. Emily read my mind. I was going to invite folks to attend the next 3 sessions. They're kind of scheduled every other week, roughly. So we're doing a 4-part summer series for alumni, and the second session is on Tuesday, June 23rd. I'll be leading that one. It's on expertly leveraging Handshake in your job search. So the Handshake tool, whether you're new to Handshake, whether you're use it a little bit but find it confusing, whether you're pro at Handshake, I'm going to do a demo and answer questions. So please come with any and all questions to that session, and I will show some tips and tricks on navigating Handshake and how to do more curated searches. And so that's going to be coming up on Tuesday, June 23rd. Then we'll have Hallie back again in for the third session on Wednesday, July 8th. That's how to adapt to and adopt AI to get ahead and stay relevant. How to adapt to and adopt AI to get ahead and stay relevant.
I know it's
And
a little bit of a tongue twister.
yeah,
Maybe we should fix
I
that.
like the alliteration.
I know.
Just as
Like, huh, was that a good idea or a bad idea? Anyway, go ahead, Sarah.
I stumbled just for a second because my little Zoom, there was like sort of a Zoom setting
Mm,
that was like it kind of blocking part of my view on the chat. Anyway,
yeah.
and then finally, the baton's going to be switched back to me. I'm going to lead the final session on Thursday, July 23rd on Career Center tools to ace the interview. So we're trying to kind of sequence these in a way that also tracks to the way that your job search process may be going. All of these are at 12 p.m. Eastern, so the same time that we did today, and all of them will be recorded as well. So if there's a session you want to attend that you can't join live, please register, and then you'll get the recording as well. And all of these are available in Handshake. Speaking of, to register for the event like you did today. Good. Okay, so I see some action
Action
steps
steps.
coming in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are great. I love these.
These are perfect. That's good. And the more like we find with networking, like test the water, like talk with someone that you know or a friend of a friend where it's a little bit lower pressure to kind of practice. Like you can do a few practice ones with people that you know, and it gets easier. Like you get more comfortable as you do it. It's a little bit of a snowball effect. So just stick your toe in the water and it will get easier over time, we promise. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank
Please
you
feel free.
to Hallie and Julia for being with us today. This was so fantastic. I want to echo and emphasize everything, all the tips and strategies I wholeheartedly endorse as well. I always walk away with some new insights. I love the idea of I'm going to co-opt and the same phrasing of networking being curiosity plus follow through. I love that. That's fantastic. I sometimes will do my own sort of twist on it, which is like making professional friendships, right? Finding like-minded people that you have share professional interests and a lot of the same kind of friendship building skills are applicable there as well. So, well, very good. We will look forward to seeing you all, hopefully back here on June 23rd. And if anyone has any questions, let us know. And with this final slide too, please feel free to scan the QR codes for accessing the slides and scheduling a consultation with Hallie and her team. And we'll leave that up while you all get that. And thank you all. Have a good rest of your day and the rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for the
Thanks.
kudos.
Bye.
Bye.